the legend ain't always true.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a cowboy.
Draw!
I remember watching spaghetti westerns with my grandfather. Clint Eastwood squinting into the sun, revolvers echoing across the living room. I'd sit beside him, wide-eyed, soaking it all in. My family would go on vacations to Maryland every summer, and every time without fail, we'd stop at a time capsule of the Wild West called Frontier Town. To me, it was magic. I'd strap on a toy holster, tip my hat just right, and for one weekend a year, I was an outlaw, or sheriff. It really depended on how I felt. As I got older, the cowboy itch didn't go away, and I found solace in video games. I played Call of Juarez, Gun, Outlaws, anything that let me live out those dusty daydreams. Even now, I still find myself chasing that feeling, but aside from Red Dead Redemption and a handful of indie titles, the Western genre doesn't get much attention these days. So I'm going back to 2013 to talk about Call of Juarez, Gunslinger. Before I get into the game, I have a question. What is your favorite Western game? Could be first-person shooter, could be RPG, whatever. Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you really enjoy the content, look into becoming a channel member for only $1 a month. This is where people usually show their channel members, so just imagine your name here. After 2011's Call of Juarez, the Cartel bombed with both players and critics, Techland knew they had to dig the series out of the dirt. Rumors started circulating that a new Call of Juarez game was in development only 4 months after the release of the Cartel. An email went out to fans from Ubisoft asking them about potential scenarios players would like to see in a new Call of Juarez game. Notably, they were all themed around the Wild West. Less than a year later, on September 6, 2012, Ubisoft announced Call of Juarez Gunslinger was coming the following year. The reaction was mixed. Some were excited to see the series return to the Old West, while others weren't convinced Techland could bounce back so quickly after missing the mark with the Cartel. On top of that, Gunslinger was one of the first games I remember being a AAA digital-only release, which was pretty confusing at the time, for me at least. Techland felt the pressure. Another flop could have buried Call of Juarez for good, but instead of playing it safe and rehashing what came before, they took another gamble. Gunslinger brought the series back to the Old West, but not the grounded, grim version from the earlier games. This time it was pure pulp. Filled to the brim with nods to spaghetti westerns and cameos from various figures from history. That shift in tone is backed by the game's cel-shaded visuals and comic book style cutscenes, a nod to the dime novels of the time, and a reminder that what you're seeing is definitely fictional. Designer Xavier Penin summed up the design philosophy best when he said, "We learn the truth and then we forget half of it." Techland didn't want the real West. They wanted the version that lives in your head after the good, the bad, and the ugly melts your brain at age 12. Although Gunslinger was released just 2 years after the Cartel, many see it as a reboot of the series. While it drops a few Easter eggs about previous entries, the game makes a significant effort to ignore them entirely. So no, Ray McCall doesn't show up in an Avengers-style cameo. Instead, the game follows the tales of Silas Greaves, a bounty hunter with a legacy dripping with more fiction than fact. Gunslinger does quite a bit to stand apart from its predecessors. Gone are the stealth mechanics, bow and arrow segments, horseback riding, and character switching from earlier titles. Instead, Gunslinger is filled with arcade-style action, fast-paced gunfights, and flashy combos. That said, a few familiar features do make a return. Concentration mode is back, letting you slow down time to line up headshots with precision. As you rack up kills, the meter fills, and when activated, enemies are highlighted in red while the world moves in slow motion. You could also cut it short to save some of the charge, adding a bit of strategy to when and how you use it. Another feature that slows down time is the new sense of death, which gives you the ability to dodge a bullet that would have killed you otherwise. There is a bit of a recharge once you use it, but it came in clutch so many times. The gunplay overall feels great, it's fairly responsive and punchy. Whether you're firing off quick shots from a 6-shooter or blasting enemies with a sawed-off shotgun, every weapon has a distinct feel and purpose. Dual-wielding revolvers has come back as well, though this time you're limited to using 2 of the same pistol, unlike Bound in Blood where you can mix and match. There is a decent variety of firepower to play with though. Pistol options include the reliable 6-shooter, the speedy quick shooter, and the hard-hitting Ranger. Rifles come in repeating and sawed-off variants, the latter being pretty useless, while the shotgun and its sawed-off variant are perfect for close-quarters carnage. Dynamite is the only throwable,
Even the odds have bolstered my confidence.
and you'll occasionally hop on stationary Gatling guns for good old-fashioned, unlimited ammo mayhem. Duels also return, reworked into tense showdowns and incorporate some mechanics I'm not a huge fan of. The duel minigame has 2 parts. You use the right stick or your mouse to keep your focus centered on your opponent. The steadier you hold it, the higher your focus builds. At the same time, you move your left stick, or press A and D, to position your hand over your holster, raising your speed. The goal is to build both meters as much as you can before the draw to give yourself the best shot at winning.
Yeah, I didn't kill Jesse James. Just wounded him bad enough to convince him to hang up his guns.
I will say that this system works a bit better than the system in Bound in Blood, but it still isn't the greatest. I often found myself struggling to maintain both meters, and sometimes I would lose the duel when the meters were high, or win when they were low, just by dumb luck, I guess. Another new feature to Gunslinger is its light RPG mechanics. As you rack up kills, you earn experience points, and leveling up gives you skill points to spend across 3 upgrade paths: revolver, rifle, and shotgun. Each tree supports a different playstyle with perks like faster reloads, slowing down time when you aim, or boosting your concentration meter with headshots. It fits right in with the arcade-style combat, more points, more kills, more upgrades. I'm not sure if you can max everything out by the end, but there is a New Game Plus mode that lets you carry over your skills for another run. The levels in Gunslinger are broken up into distinct segments. Most of the time it's a linear push through waves of enemies, your classic shooting gallery setup, followed by a boss encounter and then a duel. To keep things from getting too samey, the game throws in a few mechanics to shake things up. Like quick-time events where you have to tap the right buttons to pull off fast shots before getting gunned down. There is some enemy variety in Gunslinger, but not much. You've got your standard enemies with rifles and revolvers, and occasionally the psychopath who brought a tomahawk to a gunfight. The shield enemies stood out in a good way. Yeah, using a wooden door as a shield is a bit goofy, but it fits the tone and it adds some variety. You've got to either lob some dynamite or blow it to pieces with your bullets. Then there's the shotgun enemies, which I didn't care for as much. They're tankier than the rest, which just ends up making them feel like damage sponges more than actual threats. The game clearly wants you to keep moving and stay aggressive, but these guys slow that rhythm down more than anything else. Set in 1910, the story opens with Silas Greaves strolling into the Bull's Head Saloon, where he's quickly recognized by a few of the patrons. One of them, a young man named Dwight, is especially excited as he's read all about Silas in the dime novels, and jumps at the chance to hear the legend speak for himself. He offers to buy Silas a drink, and Silas, never one to turn down free whiskey, agrees. They're joined by a few locals, including Jack, Molly, and the bartender Ben. Dwight starts asking Silas about the stories he's read in dime novels, and Silas obliges, spinning wild tales of his past. The entire game plays out through this back and forth at the saloon, with the level design sometimes shifting mid-mission as Silas adds details or corrects himself. Throughout the game, it becomes clear that Silas is an unreliable narrator. Environments and characters bend to fit his version of events. One moment you're fighting cowboys, the next Apache warriors appear because Silas misspoke, only to switch back after he corrects himself. In one mission, a man literally falls from the sky just because Silas said he needed to find some ammo. These exaggerations give the story a surreal, almost mythic quality. My favorite example of this happens during the mission about the Dalton brothers. The story plays out 3 different ways because Silas, Dwight, and Jack have all heard their own version of what went down. The level shifts and rewrites itself as each person chimes in, turning the shootout into a sort of campfire myth told 3 different ways. It's funny, chaotic, and a perfect showcase of how the game treats storytelling as something fluid and performative. Gunslinger spans nearly 3 decades of Silas's life, following him from one bloody job to the next as he hunts down outlaws, settles old grudges, and builds a reputation that may or may not be entirely earned. Each episode focuses on a different chapter of Silas's past, often centered around iconic Western figures like Billy the Kid or Jesse James, with chapter titles like A Fistful of Hot Lead and The Good, the Bad, and the Dead, nods to classic Western films. At one point, the conversation shifts to Silas's first bounty. Dwight brings up the name Henry Plummer, but Silas takes a sharp detour, launching into a story about riding with Billy the Kid and the Regulators. Silas spins tall tales for hours, jumping around in history to meet up with figures like Jesse James, Butch Cassidy, Doc Holliday, and more. Silas explains that he was on a mission of revenge, hunting down the men responsible for killing his older brothers. He manages to catch up with 2 of them, but the third, Roscoe Bob Bryant, keeps slipping through his fingers. Bob's always one step ahead, and it happens so often that it becomes a running joke. A few missions even end with the punchline, "Bob wasn't there." The finale takes a strange, ghost-filled turn as Silas confronts the spirits of the men he's killed. It all builds towards one big question: has he become worse than the outlaws he spent his life hunting? He admits that by now he's killed more people than Bob ever did, that one act of revenge sent him down a path he couldn't come back from. Then comes the twist: the bartender Ben is actually Roscoe Bob Bryant. Silas has spent the last few hours telling stories not just to relive the past, but to judge what kind of man Bob became. And that's when the game hands you the choice: kill Bob and complete your revenge, or let him go and finally put the past to rest. It's a powerful ending, and the build-up earns every bit of it. Quick interjection: Dwight is actually Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th President of the United States. The game even suggests that the lessons Silas passed on during their conversation helped shape Dwight into the leader he eventually became, especially considering the following day he shipped out to the army. Overall, Call of Juarez Gunslinger is a fun arcade shooter that doesn't take itself too seriously. Techland ditched the grounded tone of the earlier entries in favor of something more stylized, and I think they executed it wonderfully. It's a game that knows exactly what it wants to be, a comic book version of the Wild West as imagined by a kid raised on Clint Eastwood. Despite some mechanical quirks and limited enemy variety, Gunslinger delivers a fun, fast-paced experience with a strong sense of identity and a surprisingly emotional core. It's a solid addition to the Western genre, and sadly, the last entry in the series. As of this video, there haven't been any announcements about the future of Call of Juarez. Techland's been busy with Dying Light though, which, hey, I guess that's a decent trade-off. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.